Hi, everyone. I'm Lee, and today I'm here with Juji, Shira, and Kim. Unfortunately, Taris couldn't be here with us today, but the rest of us are. We are five friends, speakers, professionals from different backgrounds, cultures, and age groups, and we come together to offer healing and inspiration. We want you, our viewers, to get to know us a little better through our struggles and triumphs and the lessons that we've learned along the way. So today, Kim is going to talk to us about her health struggle and how it took her from hell to healing in just 20 short years. My goodness, Kim, where do I even begin here? How about with your childhood? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I live in Long Island, New York. I grew up here actually, and I'm married. My parents were together up until I was in my mid-20s, until they got divorced. So, and I have two sisters, two older sisters who were always looking out for me. I'm the baby. And I have to say, I was thinking about this episode and thinking about this question. I had a feeling we would potentially start here. And there's one side of my childhood that was really just very typical, very good. I was lucky. I'm fortunate enough to, had been raised in a nice suburb, in a nice home. And, we'd have our annual block parties every year. I'd be dancing out on the street with my friends. I'd play kickball with my friends in the street. I loved all of my friends. I had, this great neighborhood. I'd be out playing and biking and doing all these things until my mom would call me in for dinner. So it was very, it was very average and good to a certain degree. And then, getting into high school, I got, a job and I would babysit and I worked at a bakery and I had, these wonderful friends. I went to prom, like I did all these things and it was so great. But there was this other level of my childhood that people couldn't see. And that was that my home was dysfunctional. I know most homes are, and mine was dysfunctional in a way that my father was an alcoholic until I was about 19 or so. And my mom didn't really handle that very well. She definitely had a hard time dealing with her emotions. And I remember once when I was young in therapy, and the therapist called my home violent. And I remember talking about it with her, and I said to her, no, my home's not violent. Like, nobody abuses me. But she said, no, your home was violent. And that really impacted you because there was so much fighting and screaming between my parents. There was even like a lot of dish throwing. My mom would throw things at my dad. She just didn't know how to handle it, made her a little unstable. And so that was a form of violence. And I didn't really see it until I got older. So there was just so many pieces of like living at home that made me feel unsafe, but not again in a way that I was like physically abused or anything, but emotionally, it wasn't a stable, safe place. And there was an amount of love that I needed from my parents. And trust me, they did the best job they could. They're wonderful people. I'm very close with both of them today. My dad's been recovered 20 something years now. But there was an amount of love that I needed, maybe a certain kind that I didn't get because they couldn't even give that to themselves. So how are they going to give that to their kids? And I'm all throughout my journey, and I'm sure we'll get into this along the way. That was the big missing piece for me, was this kind of love that I needed from them that I wasn't getting. So
Kim, what do you think, like not having that kind of love that you needed, like how did that manifest itself? Did it make you feel? Obviously, when you're in it, you don't necessarily know it. So was it something that you can look back on now and say, oh, this is how it affected me?
Well, it was very obvious how it affected me. Growing up, especially as I got older into my teenage years, I just needed everyone's approval. I needed everyone to like me. And today I'm 44 and I still have a little bit of that inside of me. Like I'm a very loving person and I just want people to be happy and I want people to love me and I want to love them. And so there's still a little piece of, there's that little girl in me that comes out every once in a while, you know, and I have to remind her, like, it's okay. Like you can love yourself now. Like you don't have to rely on others. But when I was younger, I needed everyone's approval. I needed, you know, whether I was dating, I was constantly having like really terrible experiences with boys because I would just let them verbally or emotionally abuse me because I didn't know, I just wanted their love. I just wanted love. I was willing to do anything for anyone to get it. So I put myself in situations that weren't healthy. You know, I did a lot of things that today, looking back, I probably wouldn't have done if I was able to feel that love or give it to myself. Even
Anything in particular you want to share?
well, you know, a lot of the typical things. You know, I mean, my dad is going to be listening to this. He watches all of our videos, so I'm sure he's going to just roll his eyes when he hears me say this. But I mean, I messed around with boys, and you know, did some things that I'm not proud of, and and you know, just things that were too soon for my age. Like I think I lost a bit of my innocence because I was just so focused on like, how do I get love? Oh, this will get it for me. And also like, you know, I smoked cigarettes, which both my parents now know. They caught me a bunch of times. You know, I drank alcohol. I even drove once while drinking, and that was not good. Like there was just things that I would not obviously condone or want anyone to act in those ways. But looking back, I can clearly see it was a way to obtain love. And I thought that's what would bring me love. And I was so wrong.
Mm. When did you discover your health struggle?
Oh, my health struggle began when I was about 19. And, you know, it makes so much sense. So, okay, my health struggle, when I was 19, I developed a skin disease, an autoimmune chronic skin disease called psoriasis. And I'm sure everyone watching is familiar with it in some way. You know, you see a lot of commercials for it nowadays. A lot of people have it. That's just one of.
If they're not, can you tell us a little bit? Because some people might not know what it is.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So basically, everybody's skin sheds once a month when our cells mature. And it's a very normal, common thing. Like people hear that and they might be like, what? My skin sheds? But yes, and it's very common and normal. And someone with psoriasis, my skin sheds every few days. So when that happens, it just leaves, it gets my skin very irritated and inflamed, and it leaves me with these red scaly spots. Some people, there's all different forms of psoriasis. So some people, like I get mostly spots, but some people get them as like huge lesions that might take up a huge part of one of their limbs. You know, I know a lot of people with it. So I've seen it, people all over their face, people like covering their arms or their legs like me. I get it in spots, and it's kind of like I get my elbows are my trigger point, and my knees. And then sometimes, you know, I just get little spots kind of all over. And they're itchy. They're very itchy. So that's what psoriasis sort of is in a nutshell. But when I was 19, I developed this disease. And it makes so much sense now that I'm older. You know, I ended up developing this at an age when my dad finally stopped drinking. And I carried around so much shame with me throughout the years. When I was young, I was very ashamed of what was going on in my house. I couldn't really even process it. I didn't really fully understand it until I got older. And so now all of a sudden I'm 19. And Shira, to your question before, this is another way that, you know, dealing with not being able to give myself love from my childhood, this is another way that it manifested into this another thing to feel shame about. So that feeling, that emotional story inside of me was I saw the pattern. It went from when I was young with my dad and my family throughout my 20s and 30s with this skin disease.
So Kim, if you're talking about what happened when you were 19 and like, you know, you didn't go from like 19 years old developing psoriasis to like, oh, I realized what this is all about. So can you tell us a little bit about how that journey even started, or like how it felt throughout your 20s? Because I think your 20s are kind of like a vulnerable time, even though you're considered an adult. You're still trying to figure out what kind of adult you're trying to be. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, your 20s is absolutely the most impressionable, well, maybe not the most impressionable age, but certainly, like you said, a time when you're just trying to figure yourself out. My 20s was really tough with the psoriasis because I was just getting into, I graduated from college and I was just getting into a career in television and film industry. And that is a very grueling industry. You work a lot of hours, you eat a lot of crappy food, most of the craft service and stuff. Well, back in the day, it was like mostly bagels and pastries and crackers, things that were carbs that could just give you energy really quickly because you're running around on set, you're working crazy hours, you're not sleeping normal. So today it's changed for sure. Now there's a lot more healthy options in general. But that was sort of my life, was like running around, very busy, shoving bagels down my face. And I was very excited about working in TV. There's something about it that just really fueled me. I love media. I always had this passion for it. So here I was starting to delve into this industry that excited me so much. And I was like, I'm breaking into this industry. I'm going to live in the city. And I did. I slowly in my mid-20s moved into the city. But there was always this underlying feeling of not being enough. And it bled into every aspect of my life. Dating, especially. I never even let my friends know that I had psoriasis. There were some friends, when I told them I had psoriasis in my 30s, couldn't believe it. They literally didn't believe me. They were like, what? They're like, why didn't you ever tell me this? I never saw anything on your skin. And it was because I hid it so well. I was such a master of having this huge secret that probably in the end just manifested more psoriasis. Because I was just so ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know. I honestly felt that if people saw it, if people knew I had it, I was going to die. Like, I was going to die because you know what that meant? That meant they weren't going to love me. That's what it meant for me. They were not going to love me. And I just spent most of my life not getting the love I needed. And I desperately needed love. And if they knew I had this on my skin, they were not going to love me. So I just didn't tell anybody. And I'll never, ever forget the day when I was working on a Martin Scorsese film. And the production coordinator asked me to go get Martin Scorsese and 6 of his Oscar-winning directors of photography coffee from Starbucks. And I went, and I had never felt more nervous getting coffee in my entire freaking life. And I was walking back with it, and I was wearing like a 3/4 sleeve shirt, and I handed the trays over to the production coordinator, and I had it on my elbows, but the spots would creep up my arms sometimes. And I remember I was wearing like a 3/4, like up here, and when I handed her the tray, the shirt like crept up my arm, and I just was the anxiety inside of me that she was going to see my arms was so like horrendous that I just like the anxiety was like heart beating fast because it felt like death. It felt like death to me. And I handed it to her, heart beating, all this crazy, shameful emotion that was living inside of me until literally 9 years ago. I'm 44 today. And that's how I live my life. That's the best example I can give is like, here I am living this like really exciting life. I love what I'm doing. People look at my life. She's living in the city. She's working in TV. She has all these great friends. She's dating, blah, blah, blah. But they never saw the emotional side of me. Like inside, I was like this scared, full of shame, just, needing something I was never, that was just.
I just want to give little Kim a hug. I just want to hug little Kim and go, it's going to be okay. I'm just, it's like we know each other, but like we don't really, I don't know all of the emotions that you've had to deal with in your life. And I just marvel at the fact that so many women, I'm sure a lot of men do too, but I just see this more among women, that we just have to put up this front that everything's okay when it's not. And it's so exhausting. It's just so exhausting. So what helped you get on like a healing path? Like, did you have an aha moment? Were you like, I read something, I saw something, or what helped you?
Well, two things. I'm getting like a little emotional because I don't think about this. I don't think about this day often, but like when someone asks me a question like that, it's just, this is the memory that comes up for me right away. But I was living with my now husband in our first apartment, and this was only like 7 years ago. Oh no, I'm sorry. This was before I met him. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different time that I was having a hard time. But I'd say about 2 years before I met him, I was 35, and I was in my bathroom, and I was in the city, living in the city again, living this really awesome life if you looked at it from the outside. And I was in my bathroom, and I was at the time getting into acting. It was always a bug in me, and I always wanted to act. I loved acting when I was younger. And I was doing a little bit of acting on the side. I was doing some independent films and stuff like that. And I had gotten this role, and I was in this film, this indie film. It was a horror movie, and we were shooting up in the Catskills. And we had just shot like a day where there was like 9 of us in the cast, and we were walking through the woods, and it was a hot summer day. And everyone was wearing shorts and tank tops and these like, skin showing clothes. And first of all, when I got casted, I remember being terrified that the director was going to ask me to wear a wardrobe that was a certain kind, because I didn't want to have to tell him why I needed to wear a long sleeve shirt. And then we're walking through the woods in this scene, and I'm the only one wearing cargo pants and a thin long sleeve shirt with my like cuffs rolled up and a tank top underneath. It was kind of like this, where it was just hanging. And I just remember feeling so inadequate all day long. That entire day's shoot, I just was like, why? Like, why me? Why me? Why me? Why me? I just was in this like victim state of mind. The girls were all wearing like short shorts, those wife beater tank tops. And like, I was so jealous, I was so envious of other people. Anytime I saw people exposing their skin, I was so envious and just felt like, oh, they're taking it so for granted. They have no idea how lucky they are. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up just one day after the shoot, I just felt really sorry for myself. And I was in my bathroom, and I just like kind of fell to the floor sobbing like I had never sobbed before. And I had sobbed a lot. I had sobbed in my teens. I had sobbed in my 20s. And I was about in my early 30s at this time. And I just was sobbing like something in me just was so ready not to feel this shame anymore. And it's something that's so indescribable. Like, I just felt, it was almost like an inner voice spoke to me and was like, you need to learn how to love yourself with these spots on your skin. And it was just that day that I was like, holy shit, I need to learn how to love myself with or without this disease. It wasn't even about healing the disease.
Chills.
What?
I have chills all over my body.
It makes me emotional when I talk about it, because it's just an inner knowing that took over my body in a way that I can't describe. And as soon as I got that thought, like my source or whatever you want to call it spoke to me and said, you need to learn how to love yourself with or without this disease, something just like awoke in me. And I was like, yes, how do I do that? How do I do that? Like, if I'm stuck with this disease for the rest of my life, how do I love myself anyway? Is that a possibility? Is that even possible?
Hey, Kim, this is such an amazing place for us to wrap up this episode, but we're going to continue. I love that we're ending it right now with your awakening, because we'd love to hear more about it. So we're going to wrap up this episode, but don't you worry, we're going to continue the conversation with Kim in part 2 of this interview. And until then, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Let us know what other topic requests that you might have or any questions you might have by commenting right below. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon and stay safe.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
You.